Yo, hey guys, what's up? How's everybody doing? Welcome back to No Huddle Fantasy Sports. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another day of baseball. This is the MLB DFS Slurve video. Today is Tuesday, September 15, 2020. It's looking like we have a decent slate, a larger slate finally ahead of us here. 12 total games available on FanDuel. Not totally positive about DraftKings, but of course we are talking FanDuel specific pricing here as we dive into the app. Every time we do one of these Slurve videos, we're talking pitching pricing, we're talking bats, stacks, all the relevant information you need to dominate tonight in MLB DFS. We haven't had much DFS for baseball over the last week or so. Of course, I've been on vacation. I put a video out, I think yesterday, and there was only 3 games on the slate. Welcome back basically to baseball here. So we are excited here to dive into the slate. As I mentioned, we have 12 total games. Some notable things, I guess, right off the bat here. A, there's no real weather concerns. If you're interested in that Chicago game, especially for pitching, it does look like the weather shows that the wind is blowing out a little bit, but it is cooler temperatures. I'll mention a little bit of that later as we dive into that specific game. There is, of course, a Colorado game. You have Oakland playing in Colorado. 2 very average to below average pitchers there, so you're going to have to make the decision as to whether or not you want to pay up for bats and then subsequently not be able to pay for pitching, or avoid that game altogether, or pick and choose. So we will talk about that, but outside of that, some very interesting spots. I think a lot of good stacks, a lot of good bats in play, and pitching seems very limited today with some rookie pitchers on the mound, some elite aces on the mound, and then everything in between. So again, decent slate though. I am excited for tonight's slate. We're going to dive into a contest as always here, start talking about pricing. And as always, if you're new here or simply haven't done so already, please understand we put out MLB DFS videos every single day. We're now into the NFL season, so we're putting out content related to NFL. If you haven't already, check out, I just put out a sneak preview of week 2 for NFL on the channel, so please check that out. But besides that, please make sure you're subscribed. That's the only way you'll be notified when these videos come out. Make sure you're subscribed to No Huddle Fantasy Sports. Follow me at No Huddle FS over on Twitter. If these videos are helpful, if you guys are enjoying them, give them a thumbs up, give these videos a like here. I'd really appreciate that. But without wasting too much time, let's do as we always do, dive right into the app here, dive into the pitching position, and start talking about what stands out here. And to be honest with you guys, I don't think I'm going to go much further than the top here at Udarvish, 11,200. Of course, this guy has been absolutely on fire all season long, absolutely elite for 2020. He's 7-2 with 1.77 ERA. I mean, just absolutely dominating every stat, every team he faces. Kind of has a floor of 40 and an upside of 60 plus. You love that. You love that floor. He is a heavy home favorite playing at home today in Chicago against the Cleveland Indians, a -150 favorite. So in a good spot to get the W there as a team, get the W for him on a FanDuel specific app where you only have one pitcher. Very important. Constantly. I mean, what do we have here? Every single start except for his first start, he has gotten either a win and a quality start except for the last one. So he's basically had a quality start in almost every single game since his first, gets a win in every single game, mainly because he's holding guys to no runs basically. He's a double-digit strikeout guy, 31% K upside, K percentage, K rate, however you want to say it. He is projected 7 Ks on the slate, which is by far the highest available for tonight. Again, he's playing at home. I will say for the weather, so Chicago is a dangerous place at times in the summer to pitch. He hasn't had trouble there yet. I will say the wind is scheduled to blow out. Just a light breeze, maybe 5, 6, 7 miles per hour. So nothing that should affect him from that front, but it is getting cooler in Chicago. And I think towards the middle to end of that game, the temperature drops below 70 degrees, which anything below 70 is really good for pitching, and it starts to hurt bats. So, I mean, there's nothing major to talk about in terms of weather, but the things, if anything, do point to more favorable pitching atmosphere, pitching climate there tonight. As I mentioned, he has a floor of 40 with an upside of 60 plus. You have to love that for him. In Cleveland, the opponent, as much as you'd think otherwise, they are not good this year in terms of facing right-handers, facing good pitching. They have a good record, but that's mainly because they've taken care of teams like Detroit, Kansas City. I think they played Pittsburgh and swept them. So it's a big letdown. Just almost the same as the Chicago Cubs lineup, but the Cleveland lineup, bottom 5 in WRC plus versus right-handers with an 86 WRC plus. They follow that up with a 305 WOBA, which is really bad, and a 139 ISO, so they're not hitting for power either versus right-handers. And they have a lot of switch hitters, Lindors, Ramirez's, just not having great seasons, and that's kind of the bottom line here. And we're 3/4 of the way through the season, so you don't want to ignore that. And more importantly, they have a 24% plus strikeout rate versus right-handed pitching. That's 13th overall in baseball. So they're bottom 5 in stats in terms of hitting right-handers, and they're top half of the league in terms of strikeouts. Really good scenario here. I don't know how you don't go elsewhere, or how you do go elsewhere besides Udarvish. 11-2 is very pricey. It's going to be hard to fit Colorado bats, so I guess that would be the only reason why. But he's kind of my 75% ownership from playing multiple lineups pitcher tonight. Don't really think I can go elsewhere. And really, if you look at the list here, you could possibly consider Flaherty here pitching on the road in Milwaukee. Milwaukee strikes out a ridiculous amount to right-handers, so he is in a good spot. He's pitched well. He's a 3.08 ERA. Kind of, nothing crazy. He doesn't have a huge K upside, but he's facing a high K team. He hasn't faced Milwaukee yet, so I think that's good. I just don't. I guess for $10,000, basically, I'd pay up for Darvish in a better spot. I'm skipping Carrasco, skipping Davies. Garcia's a young guy. No way I'm paying Duffy. The only other guy I'll mention to you guys very, very quickly here, you can save some money, and this is really just a money play, a value play. If you're fitting Colorado bats, game stacking that Colorado game. If I pronounce it correctly, Jose Urquidy, I think he went by Hernandez, but when he came over, he's an international young guy from Mexico, has pitched for basically with Houston for the last couple of years. Again, he's a young guy. I think he's 25 years old. He's pitched well. In 2019 for the Astros, he did face actually this Texas team at home in Houston, had 7 innings, 9 Ks, and 1 earned run. So he has a history, at least a very brief history, of doing very well versus this team. He does have decent strikeout upside. Again, young guy, not a lot of innings under his belt, but we've seen double-digit strikeouts out of him. So far this season, he's only had 2 starts. He's pitched okay. I mean, he's had a couple of strikeouts in one. He's only pitched a few innings. I think those strikeouts come out maybe. Again, I don't have a lot to base that off of. But in general, he's pitched well in his time in Houston in the major leagues. $6,300, I think we can take advantage of that. He's coming off, I mentioned, his second start there. He had 88 pitches in that start versus Oakland. So now I think we're approaching that 95, possibly 100 pitch limit. He should be fully stretched out, so I don't think we have to worry about him coming out early for any type of pitch count. Again, he's shown K upside, double digits at times in 2019. He had 9 strikeouts versus this very same exact Texas team, probably a better Texas team last year. He's pitching at home. You have to like that. He is a big home favorite at minus 184, projected 5.5 Ks. Decent numbers there all around. Texas is only projected 3.77 runs on the night, so I think that is either the lowest or one of the lowest on the night. So again, Vegas tends to agree with the play here a little bit. And finally, Texas in general versus right-handers, just like Cleveland, not very good. In fact, they're worse. 67 WRC plus on the season. That's 29th out of 30 teams. 285 WOBA, again 29th out of 30 teams. 145 ISO, 24th. And then they have a 24.5% K rate, which is 11th overall in baseball. So they're basically top 10 in strikeouts and one of the worst bottom 2 teams in every other stat versus righty. So a good spot for him pitching at home. Should get the win here, or should be in a position to get the win. Texas projected very low from Vegas. Again, the stats don't support Texas at all in 2020 hitting right-handers. I think if you want to save money, $6,300 is a very, very, very cheap price tag on this guy here that could potentially get you 40 points. So low floor, but decently high upside. I do like him for, a lower owned tournament play. And so that's really it. As I mentioned, I don't think I'm going to go anywhere else, so I don't want to waste your guys' time. I think we can jump directly into stacks here. I'll stick with pitchers because I like to just point out who I'm attacking. So I think you can definitely stack my number 1 stack on the night. It's going to be pricey, even though you are not playing specifically Colorado Coors bats. But I do want to tag this Eshelman, Thomas Eshelman for Baltimore. basically stack Atlanta against him. We stacked Atlanta the other night. They didn't do very well, but I'm right back at it tonight. You have to trust the stats here, and Eshelman has lit up in every category for me. In general, he struggles for both lefties and righties. He's really, really bad. He's the slate leader in terms of xFIP with a 6.18 xFIP to lefties. Anything above 5 is bad, and he's above 6, 5.83 to righties, so really, really bad numbers. A little bit worse to lefties, but just generally awful versus lefties and righties. His WOBA is 330 to lefties, 375 to righties, so he's getting hit hard left and right, as I mentioned. Really, really low K guy. You're looking at an 8% strikeout rate to lefties, 15% strikeout rate to righties, so he's not striking anyone out. They're hitting him very well. Just a really ideal matchup for an away Atlanta team. So you're getting that away stack. I have to like that with that extra 9th inning guaranteed at bat there. You can stack Atlanta, in my opinion, up and down the order. Lefties, righties. Don't avoid your Duvalls. Don't avoid your Azunas simply because they're right-handers. Make sure you get your Freemans. They're fully healthy, I believe, as a lineup now. So really looking good. But Atlanta in general, they tag right-handers too. So they have a 126 WRC plus versus righties. That's 3rd overall in baseball. 364 WOBA, that's number 1 in baseball, and 228 ISO, that's 3rd overall. So they're hitting them well and they're hitting them hard. They're a top 5 team versus right-handers facing a really bad pitcher, at least from a statistics standpoint. Doesn't have a ton of innings. He has enough to make it to my list, and I will mention he doesn't look good. So in Baltimore, last thing I'll mention here, Baltimore is a very favorable hitter's park. So all good things here in my opinion. I will mention too, I have a note here, he's giving up home runs. I should have mentioned that earlier. Eshelman has a 2.16 home runs per 9 to lefties, 2.75 to righties. Both of those are number 1 on the slate, meaning the worst on the slate. He hasn't lasted long into games, I will mention that. You can see here 2, 3, 1, 4. He's basically been getting about 70 pitches. I don't know if he's a middle reliever, what his deal is. But in general, he's probably not going to last 2 or 3 innings, but we could tag him very early for those Atlanta bats. As I mentioned, if you want to talk which bats to play, go everywhere. Freeman's in play. Albies is, of course, in play. He's been batting 9th, which kind of sucks, but you can kind of get that wraparound. I think that helps with his ownership, but $3,900 for a 9th position player, 9th in the lineup, does stink. As I mentioned, going with other positions here, Kuna, Ozuna, basically all the names you can think of. If Markakis is in the lineup, that saves you some money at $2,600. Adam Duvall, as I mentioned, should be in the lineup. He's kind of a guy that has that double-digit, double home run. You see Travis d'Arnaud. I'm not going to tell you which players to play. I would definitely suggest getting Freeman in there, Kuna in there. They're expensive, and then trying to round it out. But I'm stacking it a million different ways tonight. I really want to attack this Eshelman. And then in general, also the Baltimore bullpen, just so you guys know, is not very good. So you don't have to fear about a good bullpen coming in. The other stack I want to mention here, this is kind of going off the rails a little bit. Projected at only 4.45 runs, but I do like the position that Detroit is in tonight. Now, they are a home stack, which always, isn't the best in the world, but they're facing Danny Duffy, and Danny Duffy, the lefty, is not very good. He's not very good versus righties. He hasn't been good for a number of years now. He's getting older. Detroit is heavily loaded with right-handed bats. That's kind of the trigger here. And Duffy, as I mentioned, a left-hander, does struggle versus righties. In fact, if you look at their projected lineups, with switch hitters batting right-handed, you could see a completely right-handed Detroit lineup. The Tigers are not a very good team this year, but they actually hit lefties very, very well. I'll read you their numbers here. Versus lefties, Detroit has a 136 WRC+, that's 3rd overall in baseball, 373 WOBA, that's 4th in baseball, and the only downside is they don't have a ton of power with 186 as their ISO, so that's 13th. But their WOBA and their WRC+ suggest Detroit is one of the best teams. Think about that, one of the best teams in all of baseball versus left-handers. So you really have to like that here. As I mentioned, only projected 4.45 runs, but I think that number's a little low for them from a Vegas total. They're going to go under-owned, underlooked. They're cheaper. That's another big thing here. Duffy, as I mentioned, versus right-handers does struggle with a 5.18 xFIP. Anything above 5 is really, really attractive in terms of a stack, in terms of bats, and a 1.61 home run per 9. So he also gives up the long ball. He's on the road. He's pitching in Detroit. That's better than pitching in Well, from a stack perspective, Kansas City, Detroit more of a hitter's park. And the big thing here, as I mentioned, it's a value stack. It's helping you fit in your Udarvish, possibly some of the other bats that are more expensive in maybe Colorado. But every single bat, depending on where you go, at least what's projected here, every single bat for this team is under $3,000. So again, you have to really like that. It really does help fit more expensive bats, fit other players. You can go a number of different ways here. I would stick to the right-handers, as I mentioned, especially if you can stick to the true right-handers versus the switch hitters, but don't be afraid to go anywhere. As I mentioned, all these guys are super cheap, $3,000 or less, the entire lineup for Detroit. I think you can definitely at least pick and choose some bats from this lineup, but I'll definitely be stacking them to some degree tonight. I really like the two I want to mention here. If he's not going to miss the game, Scope here for Detroit has had an excellent season actually, but he's obviously hurt his hamstring, so we'll see what happens. He's just been sore. We'll see if he gets back in the lineup here. I do like Melky Cabrera, obviously at only $2,700, a very, very attractive number there. And although he doesn't have the greatest numbers versus him, Candelario in a good spot, but you're going to use up both your flex positions there, or I should say first base and then your flex position, but having a great season there as a right-hander, or a switch hitter. So that's kind of the value stack. The only other stack I want to mention very, very quickly for you guys here is the New York Mets stack. We're going to attack Jake Arrieta. And I tried to do it before. It didn't work last time. He's kind of had a couple of good starts in a row now. I think this stack goes under-owned, and I'm really excited about that. It is more expensive, I will admit. But the reason I think it goes under-owned is simply because people chase game logs. And if you look at the game log, Jake Arrieta on 9/4/2020, just a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago, pitched against the same Mets team on the road in New York when 7 innings, had 7 Ks, 2 earned, 46 points. So he pitched very well. But look at other teams. I mean, you're talking 7 earned runs versus Atlanta. Barely didn't make it out of the first. 4 to Boston, 4 to Baltimore. He gives up a ton of runs. He is not a strikeout guy. I think, as I mentioned, the stack itself for the New York Mets goes lower owned. As I mentioned, it's going to be a game log type of chase, or not chase, but avoidance here. He fared well in his last outing. I think that's an outlier versus the Mets, to be honest with you. If you stick to the stats, if you stick to the advanced metrics, they say otherwise. He's not a strikeout guy. 7 strikeouts doesn't make sense. In fact, he only has a 16% strikeout rate this year to lefties, and that's only 17% to righties. So he's not even getting right-handers out, which is a more favorable split for him. That's in 2020. He has a 449 xFIP to lefties, 436 to righties, 342 to lefties, 353 to righties. He's always been worse versus lefties, but you can attack him simply because he doesn't strike anyone out with lefties, with righties. The Mets are loaded with left-handed bats. I like all the bats in the lineup. I feel like this is a very similar scenario to the last time we really attacked John Lester, in the fact that he's on the verge of blowing up. His numbers are not supporting some of the things he's been doing. It's just he's teetering with it, and it's going to come, and I think tonight's the night. I really like this Mets stack. The only downside is they are expensive, but again, I think they're going to go lower owned here. They do crush in terms of the Mets themselves. This team absolutely mauls right-handed pitching. They've done it all season long. They have a 129 WRC plus, which is number 1 all of baseball, 358 WOBA, which is 3rd, 191 ISO, which is, I believe, 8th. So they come down a little bit in power. 4 of their 5 first in the order bats are going to be lefties. And 2019, or I should say, if you go back to 2019, they faced him several times, faced Arrieta. He gave up 15 earned runs in, I think, 4 starts. He did last 24 innings overall, but it's just not really good numbers. This guy's going to blow up. But as I mentioned, you can go, I would stick with the left-handed bats here. Some of them are more of a value. So right off the bat here, $2,900 for Brandon Nimmo stands out easily as one of my favorite plays on the slate. Michael Conforto, he's going to be a more expensive bat at $3,500, but easily get him in your lineup here. If you want to stick, unfortunately, this eats up a lot of your salary, or I should say outfielder spots, but $3,400 for Smith, another lefty. Robinson Cano is a little bit cheaper at $3,200. I do like him. If you want to put right-handed bats in there, JD Davis stands out as a bat that has a lot of power, even though it's right on right, but I don't mind that at all. Jeff McNeil, third base. I should just click up here for Jeff McNeil. He actually has decent numbers already versus Arrieta. Alonso, I would go left. I would go with everybody in this lineup, to be perfectly honest with you guys. But in general, this is what I'm looking at. The 3 stacks I mentioned, I really like the Mets. The only downside is they are a little bit pricey, but they're projected 5.03 runs. I didn't mention that. So a nice, decent above 5 Vegas total for them. I like the Mets. My number 1 stack would be Atlanta, though, projected at 5.88 runs. And then I do like, for a value stack, at 4.45 runs right now, the Detroit Tigers versus Danny Duffy, the lefty. Now, in terms of some one-off bats, I will mention it's going to be tough to swallow the pill of not playing any bats from the Colorado game or stacking that game. So you have Oakland in Colorado. I will mention somehow, some way, I'm going to try to get exposure to that game a little bit, especially on that Oakland side. Really like Matt Olson in a great spot. I really like Trevor Story versus a lefty anytime you can get that. I do like Nolan Arenado, depending on his status. I know he's been kind of banged up a little bit here and there. But versus a lefty also. And then last but not least here, another guy I'm going to try to get exposure to, similar deal, La Stella, should be leading off for Oakland. But Oakland, in terms of who I would like to get exposure to in some of these other stacks, so I'm stacking Atlanta, I'm stacking the Mets, I'm stacking Detroit, playing Udarvish, playing that cheaper pitcher from Houston, and then I want to get Olson, La Stella from Oakland in, and somehow definitely get Story and try to get some Arenado exposure too. But outside of that, some other bats I'm interested in, just in general. I do like, from Chicago standpoint, Ian Happ stands out pretty good to me tonight, $3,200. I hate playing the Cubs, but these guys, their pricing is just too low, but they haven't been hitting, so I understand why. Him and Rizzo stand out. I think they're good pricing on them. We'll talk more Chicago bats and value here in a bit. I do really like to attack Porcello tonight with Bryce Harper, the lefty. Again, you're going to have to pay up for him $3,900, but he is the other side of the coin here. Philadelphia playing at home versus Porcello, who does struggle versus lefties. Merrifield, he's now considered an outfielder position for Kansas City. He's facing a lefty also, and Matt Boyd here. He has good numbers versus him. I do like him standalone. I do like Michael Brantley too. I will mention him for Cleveland. Or I'm sorry, for Houston, not for Cleveland, tonight. $3,300. I think he's their best. He's definitely their best left-handed bat, but I think he's one of their best overall, just generally best bats in that lineup for a team that I won't go there. But Brantley, really like him at $3,300. Now, if you want to talk value, going back to that Chicago game, Schwarber, he's been under $3,000. Hopefully hits higher in the order, but $2,900, hard to avoid that there. Also sticking, I mean, these guys are just so cheap for the Chicago team. Like, there is no reason that Javier Baez should be $2,800, but he is, and he hasn't been hitting, so you understand why. If you can go there, if you want to go there, decent price on him. Really, really good price in my opinion. I just don't know if he's going to start hitting at all. Some other bats I do want to mention, Travis Shaw for Toronto. I think he's in a good spot versus a rookie pitcher, but he's $2,500. That's the key here. Playing, should be hitting middle of that lineup, playing in New York, a good ballpark for that. A lot of third basemen stand out. Jake Lamb, if you want to get more exposure to that Oakland team, $2,700, probably the cheapest bat you're going to get out of that lineup. Should be hitting a little bit higher in the order. This guy was so good just a few years ago. I don't know what happened. Just fell off a cliff, left Arizona. Now he's in Oakland. But $2,700. We'll see if he's in the lineup. Two other guys I really quickly want to mention. I'm interested in Arizona bats, not as a stack, but I think they're in a good spot. Tehran, whatever his name is, has been really bad over the last couple of years. He still is bad pitching for Los Angeles. But at second base, basically bare minimum, $2,200. Rojas has been either leading off or hitting really high in the order. So I do like that at $2,200, getting you exposure, as I mentioned, against Julio Tehran. Right-hander, really, really bad generally over the last couple of years. Don't think they're going to score a ton of runs. They barely score runs, but you take the value bats where you can, and I think it's a good spot. Also, similar deal. This sucks, but he also is second base here, and that's Van Meter. He has been hitting, sorry if I could type it correctly, he's been hitting top of that order at times. Just look, see who's up there, see who's $2,000. That's a good value. It's going to help you with pricing there. But that's really it for a lot of the bats. As I mentioned, just to do a quick recap here, I'm going to be playing heavy Udarvish tonight at pitcher, especially on FanDuel where you only have one pitcher. Cleveland only projected 3.77 runs. If I'm going to flip to a cheaper pitcher, the only other guy I'm interested in at $6,300 is your Quaddy, or whatever his name is, versus Texas. Again, another team only projected 3.77. I mentioned generally I want to stack Atlanta, Detroit as a value stack, and the New York Mets. All those guys stand out to me. I'm going to sprinkle in some bats from Oakland, some bats from Colorado, and then every other bat I mentioned there. So hopefully these videos are helpful for you guys. I know some of you have been asking over the last week where these videos are. So I was on vacation. Now we're back, grinding it out here. I'm gonna be playing a lot in MLB tonight. I'm really looking forward to this slate. It's looking like a good one. It's looking like I have a good idea of where to go tonight. So I am excited. Hey, please let me know down in the comments below. I'm on 2 pitchers. If there's other guys that you guys are interested in, if I'm missing something, let me know in the comments. Let's work together here. Let's build some great lineups tonight. Outside of that, please make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Please make sure you give these videos a like. I'd really appreciate it. Check out my NFL content. That season is underway and it's already on fire. So check all that out. Give me a like here on this video. I'd really appreciate it. Last but not least, I will mention down below in the description, I've linked a affiliate link for Daily Fantasy Nerd. I've talked about it a lot. It's a great optimizer, the best for baseball, but it also offers NFL, offers basketball, anything you're into. You don't have to pay for different, sports, things like that. It's all available to you guys, all the stats you need for baseball, everything. It's great for building multiple lineups. I'm going to be doing a ton of lineups tonight in baseball. I am excited, as I mentioned, about this slate. And of course, I'm going to be using Daily Fantasy Nerd to do that. So it's part of the success here on the channel. It's part of successful lineups for me. So please check out that affiliate link. I believe you get a free month, which will help you with football. It'll help you with baseball, all that good stuff. So please check that out. It does help support the channel here. But outside of that, thank you guys for tuning in, hanging in there with me. Hopefully these videos are helpful. Good luck tonight, and I will catch you in the next video.